Okay, now I'm going to show you how to use the Elite Annual Financial Budget and Forecast tool. First thing you need to identify is what your annual revenue or sales are for your shop. Once we understand that, then we can simply divide that number by 12 months and then plug in your average monthly sales figure right here. So if it's $100,000, put in $100,000. If it's $200,000, put that in there. So whatever your annual sales divided by 12 months is, and all we're trying to do is figure out what your average monthly sales are at this point, and then we'll dial that in a little bit later as we determine what we want our monthly sales to be. But for now, we just want to put in the average, and we're going to just put it in there, a good round even number for $100,000, just for the purpose of demonstrating this. Okay, the next thing we want to identify is, and you can probably find this information from either your profit and loss statement, or if you don't have one of those available, then you need to try to find that information in your management system, trying to find out what your gross profit percentage of sales is. So after, if you've sold 100,000 and the direct costs, your cost of labor, parts, etc., was 60,000, then your annual gross profit percentage would be 40%. Okay. Then what you need to identify is what is your labor percentage of sales. So if you were to look at your financial statement, your profit and loss, or if you looked in your management system for the last year, what was your average percentage of labor compared to overall sales? So another example of that is if out of $1 million or $100,000, your average percentage of sales was 40%, then you would put 40% or whatever that number is in there. Typically, it runs between even 40 and 45% for most shops. All right, the next thing you need to identify is what is your adjusted door rate. So if you took your mechanical rate, your frame rate, everything, and just kind of averaged it out over the year, what would be your adjusted door rate? What are you selling your work for on average? So that's the other factor that you need to know. So once you've got those, I want to point out that only the yellow cells can be changed. So you're not going to be able to go in here and change the sales. Everything in the white squares is automatic. It's got formulas behind it, so you can't change it. So the next thing you need to identify is the number of working days. So you just need to spend a little bit of time at the beginning of each year and take a look at a calendar, have some discussions, and determine in advance what days are we taking off. Are we taking the day after Christmas off? Are we working that day? And go in and just start plugging in the number of working days. So these are not probably based on reality here, so you'll need to do this on your own. Okay, so you plug that in there. The other thing that I want to point out here is, so you can see already that it's suggesting based on the number of working days. So because we know that your average sales is $100,000, we know that your average daily sales is 4625. See how that works? So that's breaking that down based on a factor of 21.62, which is the average working days. If you took a look at the whole year and averaged all the months out, 21.62 tends to be the average number of working days per month. So what we're trying to do is just establish an average at this point. That will tell us what your daily sales capability is. Hope that makes sense. So what these squares are basically doing is saying, okay, so you're capable of producing $4,600 a day in sales. So if I've got 20 working days, it's simply multiplying that by 20 working days, and that's giving you your sales for that month. So if you got 21 working days, it's going to be a little bit more. If you had 23 working days, look, now you can do $106,000 that month, based on what your capacity is to deliver cars each day. So that's how that works. Now we've added something new to our tool this year, and that's called the growth factor. And as you continue to grow your business, it's important to know, so if it's a 0 here, that's just saying that you are running along at the average rate that you typically would. So maybe you have a goal that you want to grow your sales by 5-10% by the end of the year or whatever. So you can go in there and say, okay, I want to grow 1% over my average from last year. Okay, and then maybe in April you're saying, maybe I can get a new new contract with a fleet company, and I think I can grow sales by 2% over the average, right? And then you would run along at 2%. Maybe you want to grow that to 3%. So you just put the percentage over your average annual sales in that slot, or over your average monthly sales. And so what that'll do is it'll inflate the total monthly sales goal down below. See how that works? So if this was at 0 with 21 working days, you see it would be $97,000. But because you want to grow by, let's say, 5%, now your sales target is $101,988. See how that works? And then the next line is simply calculating your sales by your gross profit percentage. So if you wanted to set a goal to grow to a 45% overall gross profit margin, then your gross dollars are going to go up, which obviously is going to impact your profitability. All right, and then we've got a place here. Again, these are yellow squares, so that you get to go in and determine what your expenses are. And so what I mean by that is not your direct costs, not labor, parts, materials, and those things of that nature, but what you might consider your overhead expenses, your rent factor, what you're paying your administrative staff, things of that nature. So you just add up your total expenses. And again, you should probably have this information on your profit and loss statement so that you can put that in there. And so what you can do is you can just put in what you think it is. So if it's going to be 35,000 total expenses, you put that in there, and you can actually take this and drag it over the 12 months and see how it changes all of them to 35. And then maybe over here, as you're starting to grow a little bit, maybe you're going to be adding some expense. So you could go over here and put 37,000 in, things of that nature. See how that works? All right, and then you can watch all along as you're making these adjustments what your net profit is going to be and what your net profit as a percentage is going to be. Now there's a cool tool that we added to the financial forecast tool down below, because some people are curious how, as their business continues to grow, what is that going to look like from a technician's perspective? Am I going to have to add more people? And so what we've done here is we've just given you the ability to plug in the total number of techs you have between body and paint, and that'll give you an idea of what the efficiency is going to need to be in order for you to maintain these numbers. So for example, if I was to change our average monthly sales to 200,000, let's say you had a really good year, you can see here with 3 techs, your team would have to produce at a 287% efficiency, and so for most of you, that's probably not very realistic. So you might need to, add a few technicians, right? You may need to have 6 to get to 143, or if we put in 5, they'd have to operate at 172, which for some people is doable, but for some people it's they may be able to hit at a percentage of 172 for a month or two, but it may not be considered sustainable. So that's kind of the way that works. And then you can just change the technicians as you need. Again, maybe over here as you're starting to grow, maybe you want to add a technician or 2. And so that will show you what your labor efficiency needs to be in order to hit your sales goals above. And so that's kind of in a nutshell, that is how to use your annual financial budget and forecast tool, also with the labor requirement calculator. So I hope this information helps.